Good evening, Brett. How you doing?
Good evening or good morning to you, Errol, as we're talking to each other from exact opposite sides of the planet.
Yes, we
Morning.
are.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
If
You
you
have a
had a,
coffee, I have a beer. Hey.
yeah, my morning coffee. This is my second one of the day. And what are you
Nice.
drinking there, bud?
I am drinking from Untold Brewery in Situate, Massachusetts. I'm drinking Abigail, which is it's I think it's very well suited to summer, but it's sold year round.
Mhm.
It's a citrusy, just a nice light ale,
Ooh.
mm,
Where'd
small
you say it was
batch
from?
thing. It's a brewery called Untold Brewing. And
Ooh.
it's in Situate, Massachusetts. Very
Yeah.
good people
Uh-huh.
run it. I don't want to sound like Trump. They're very good people. They're the best people. They're the greatest people of all time. Of course, they're American.
Mm.
But it's a delicious beer. Very light, crisp, citrusy. Finishes just super easy.
Mm.
I love it. Very
That's
good beer in the summertime.
I'm very impressed with how much you've come to understand beer. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you. It's fun. It's
Uh,
it's sort of like reading great books. Technically, it's work,
mhm.
especially if you get paid to do it. But it's remarkable. I remember my political science professor back, and he guided my seminar in my senior year of college. His name is Dr. William Gibson. He said to me one time when I went to visit him in his office, he's like, "Why are you an English major?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you're reading Dostoevsky and Proust and Henry Miller. You'd be reading that great stuff anyway and doing something else. It's
Yeah.
like you trying to make a career out of doing what we all do, and because
Love
it's just so
professors like that.
pleasurable to read a well-written
Mhm.
story.
Yeah.
It's just and it's pleasurable to learn about beer. You're learning about the supply chain. You're learning about ingredients. You're learning about chemical reactions. You're learning about the people who decide to do this work, which no one gets rich on. Very,
Mhm.
very, very few people get rich on it. Um,
And you
and
met
it's
the
usually
Gale
what they.
guys from Abigail. You met them? The Brewers?
Oh yeah, sure. Hmm. Yes, I was the first store. Boy, I have to be careful how I say this. The first store along. So there's different thoroughfares, state roads in Massachusetts that loosely define geographical areas, and where I live is defined by Route 24, which has three different, four different, if you count New Bedford, post-industrial cities
Mm.
with depressed economies and where the drug trade is flourishing and suburban folks are rather scared to death of. So Route 24 is sort of looked down upon, and there aren't a lot of stores along the Route 24 corridor, which extends about 35 to 40 miles that carry craft beer. And I was the first store along that corridor to carry Untold. I used to drive out there myself to get it and bring it back. And it's an honor. I really enjoy what they do. I'm fairly close to the head brewer, Kyle, and he's just a wonderful guy. He's a very young, thoughtful guy. And that's part of the perks of working in that industry, the beer industry. Not only do you get to learn about beer, but you get to learn about the people who make it.
Yeah. They're artisans more than
Yeah,
they're
sure. Yeah, they're chemists, craftspeople, and artists all in one.
if you had to describe that brewery, Abigail, in a word, what would you pick?
One word: bold.
Ooh.
They're making beer styles that they're pushing beer styles that are not market popular, and they're still doing a very good job. They're still making money
Mm.
insofar as any brewery can make money right now, where tap rooms and restaurants,
Yeah.
where the margins are highest for them, are tentatively reopening.
Yeah.
So running not even a half capacity, right? Not even half.
Yeah.
So
Just the
it's tough.
economy's been contracting like crazy, right?
Sure, sure,
Uh,
yeah.
but with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's go.
Make a point. Make a point.
Signing off this week, when boozing through lit, fuck a duck.
So,
Very Android segue, sir. I like it.
when the coronavirus hit, a couple months back. It hit the States, right? The first case in the States was confirmed on January 21st. I believe it was recorded January 20th. And governors started shutting down businesses, their borders, telling everybody to stay home. The thing that I started noticing, and the thing that I was really confused about, were barbers and hair shops. How often do you get a haircut, Brett?
I don't think I'm typical, but I get a haircut about twice a year.
Same here.
But I don't think I'm typical. I think, especially folks in my area, which is a rather conservative area, like the high and tight, very clean kind of haircut is very popular for men in particular. And they go once a week just to make sure everything's clean.
Really? Once a week?
Yeah, once a week. Once a week.
'Cause
They're the bread and butter for barbershops around here. And of course, stylists are with the Hausfrau, and the housewives who, if their roots show, half a millimeter, they think they're worthless as human beings. So they get their hair dyed quite often. So the men with their perennial need to have hair clean, which I think also is popular among Hispanics and black folk as well. Black men, they like a very clean haircut. So that's one thing that folks with different backgrounds racially have in common around in my area. Frequent trips to the barbershop. Right. And with women too. It's just looking good. Looking good is part of the culture. And a big deal it goes into the head, as it were. So I'd say frequently. I'd say most of my neighbors are going to either the barbershop or the hairstylist 2 to 3 times a month, if not more.
Because as an unkept sloth that I am, it was just confusing to me to see all these protests. Getting haircuts on Capitol Hill. Maybe not Capitol Hill, but like the different states' Capitol Hills, right?
Sure.
And I just thought that was such an interesting thing because it's very culturally American, isn't it? Is it not? Or am I wrong about this?
I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know. Like even people with, bellies and beards, like these really sort of Viking-like beards, even they will often keep the top of their head nice and cropped and have this giant beard. There's almost like a counterpoint going on their heads.
So it's just me and you, huh? Me and you against the world.
I don't know what Nigerians do.
Right? No, of course not.
I don't know how often they go to hair salons or barbershops or cut their hair. I don't know what Germans do. I know what Koreans do. Yeah. Oftentimes the older Korean men will get their hair cut in saunas and stuff, and the younger folks will go to stylists. But it's about having control over the way you look, right? It's a very important thing for people to be able in this idea that even in the midst of a crisis you can keep up appearances. It's important for people morally, I think. Right. And it goes back, I think, culturally in some sense. Maybe to that English idea of a stiff upper lip. Right. The Sir Alec Guinness's character in Bridge on the River Kwai, who would not break even under Japanese torture, who stayed ramrod straight even in death, up until the point of his death in the movie. This idea that you don't, even in extraordinary time of crisis, you get your hair cut. It's almost an act of defiance to this invisible enemy we're confronting.
Well, the reason why I brought that up is, like you said, it's an invisible enemy, right? Like we personify it in a way, and we personify this enemy based on who we are and what we're afraid of.
Sure.
So I was hoping to segue into your topic using the haircuts, which is the metaphorical importance of the coronavirus. What do you?
I don't know if you feel the same way. Coronavirus it's death, isn't it? It's, even if it's not as lethal as Ebola or not as lethal as car usage, per capita, or choking on a piece of meat, let's say. I'm not sure, but we have no defense for it that is 100% effective right now.
Mm-hmm.
The only defense we have against it is just to not leave your house and to not let anyone in. And that is, unless we are being delivered our provisions and it's left on the doorstep. Even then, I'm not sure if it's been totally proven that you can't get coronavirus from surfaces, but even then, if you're having food delivered, how do you know the driver doesn't have it? Whatever.
Right.
But we're confronting it. We're facing it. It's destroying us. It's in many cases, it's making impossible the lives we used to lead. And when I say we, I don't mean we in an ecumenical sense. I don't mean I just mean we as in the folks within our ken and experience. I think people in the top 1% economically, globally. And I feel bad that I use we in that term, but I really can't speak for anything else. But certainly with the meat supply chain partially broken here in America, you have meat production at record lows, or maybe not record lows, but certainly very low. You have E. coli contamination in ground beef that had to be recalled from Walmart recently. It's an interesting thing. That's just one example, of course, of the supply chain weakening. Mm-hmm. But you have this, you have talk that it's going to take America at least 10 years to pay back the debt it's accruing right now in just 3 months. It's just numbers like that. It's impossible for me to see things returning to the way they were. And we could have a separate discussion as to whether they should return to the way they were. But we are facing, in a metaphoric sense, death itself. And in a way, when we say death, we also mean life, because we are always, life is life is at least two different phenomena, right? It's personal and it's universal. It's personal in that we have a life that we are egoistically, we believe, belongs to us and we have some measure of control over, when in reality we have no control over it whatsoever. I could drop dead right now. I could drop dead literally right now as I speak. My heart could stop. We don't have any control or claim on it, yet we operate as if we do. So it's like the same thing as saying we do. But life is also something which is unbroken from when the first complex protein spontaneously split into two back 4 billion years ago. Life is this unbroken blood chain, this unbroken DNA RNA chain extending and expressing itself in manifold ways in discrete organisms that continues, right? It just continues in a trillion different aspects that morph and change and constantly. But then there's on the Janus face of things, there's the other side, which is to say that selection and dissemination are very important to life's vigor. It seems to be necessary that life be in a multitude of different forms, constantly changing. And there's no purpose to it, but it just is. It's just so death, the other side of things, right? Death is very important in the selection against redundancy and obsolescence. It clears the way for more tenacious life to continue going. Death and life are the same thing, except, or if you will, the yin and yang, the two-faced coin, that sort of thing. Coronavirus is not life, it's death. It's not, I don't think RNA is things that are viruses, or people are unsure as to whether we can classify them as living things.
Yeah, people are very confused
because they have to use your cell. They have to take your life and coerce it to itself and hitch to you, as it were, and turn your cells to its bidding, which it doesn't have a bidding. It's interesting. It's just It just links up. The point I'm trying to get at is coronavirus is life in all of its extraordinary fear and beauty, I think. It's, you know, we must link together. We must get together to confront this crisis.
By
Draws
staying
us
away.
better to one another. By staying away, right? That's such a great point. But nonetheless, we do that, and in many areas around the world, the fight to contain coronavirus and prevent it from killing the vulnerable among us is succeeding. In some areas, it's not, but we're trying. Many of us are anyway. Some of us are taking a more cavalier attitude toward it, and mazel tov to that. I mean, if you want to gamble like that, go right ahead. But of course, that you can't say that because it risks other people's lives as well. But
Yeah.
it's just it's a very potent metaphor. Life in its personal sense, our life, right, that we consider ours, is always in jeopardy.
Uh-huh.
And think of what this has done to make us more aware of immune health
Right.
and hand sanitation.
Yeah,
and
and
not
the-
rubbing your eyes.
In the Western world,
Yeah.
that's amazing, right? Like
It's amazing
how
We
unconscious we were to.
fucking filthy slobs. We just, but also at the same time, I mean, there's an argument to be made for not washing your hands all the time, every time you touch something. But I don't think Americans, certainly not myself, we're washing our hands nearly as often as we should be.
Mm.
And it's just, but there's death in a discrete package. There it is. It's a fatty protein that enters your body, and if it can fit into your cell wall and pass through it, it takes the cell over, replicates itself using your DNA, and your body fights it. And if your antibodies fight it in such a way, you get COVID-19 and you get a fever and dry cough, and you may die.
Or you don't,
But that's
right?
just,
Like some people
it never
don't. It's
fits in your
arbitrary.
cells at all.
Yeah.
It just is in you for a little while until it gets found out, and or whatever, until it just doesn't, until it becomes inoperative.
So how is this disease different than other ones, though? Like when you pitched the idea, I thought you were going to be talking about like this more like what we would remember it as in the future in a way, right? Like all the
We don't have a treatment
diseases.
for it. That's the difference. We don't have a treatment for it. It's all defense.
Right. But like for instance
The offense is defense, which feels different, doesn't it, than actual vaccinations and taking pills and whatever else. It feels different somehow. We're doing the same thing. Like when we wear a mask in public and we stay away from folks and wash our hands when we get home, in some ways it's just as proactive as taking a vaccine, but it oppresses us because number one, it feels like defense, and number two, it's constantly on our minds. You take a vaccine, you're sick for a day or two, and then you don't have to think about it until next year.
Maybe that's why
This is a constant vigilance. It's oppressive. We don't have a treatment yet.
Maybe that's why American, or typically it seems to me, conservative Americans are against these more passive forms of combating the virus, because America is known as being more active, right? As like there's this idea of go out and get it, go out and do it. And now they're telling what you have to do to prevent this is stay home. And people are that. See, I think I'm very interested in what it represents to us in that way, like consumption. Old TV. When we got that, people thought it was romanticized because that was like the era we in, the romanticism of the time, right? Getting all pale and succumbing to the vapors and look, a little bit of blood. I die. Right? Like that was
woe is me.
right. And
I shall see my nana at the pearly gates.
Remember me, love. Remember me. The good times. Right. So, and I thought that's interesting. I'm curious to see what this will be. And you talked about it when you said it's the coming together to to come together, we have to stay apart in this age of
You said that. That was beautiful.
Oh.
That was beautiful.
to
It's just
to but in this age of interconnectedness like we've never seen before. I mean, like we started off the podcast, you're all the way in Massachusetts, I'm all the way over here in Jeju, and we've never been more interdependent than ever before. And then we're seeing the effects of that when we're told to stay home. Things fall apart completely.
Oh man.
And I wonder if we're going to look back at this virus and compare it to maybe the political situation we have now in certain countries. Like New Zealand, they're done. They had like football games with full stadiums over the weekend. But in America,
Right.
the political divisiveness,
Right.
everyone's still getting, you get like 400, I heard that, I didn't look up the stats today, but like hundreds of new cases, thousands of new cases a day, hundreds of new deaths.
Yeah, Florida in particular is having a very hard time with this. They keep reopening beaches, and I mean it's just they're trying desperately to get money into the state coffers. And I don't think maliciously either. I think irresponsibly, but
Yeah.
I don't think maliciously. I think that there's no one on the face of the earth right now who knows how we're going to get out of this without some devastating long-term consequences. And it's very interesting to think that the virus is mutating every time it goes into a host. Will a more lethal permutation, because it's perfect, it spreads almost perfectly. The only way it could be worse, I think, if it was airborne or waterborne, and it could very well mutate into.
If it was airborne, we'd be in trouble. Wait.
Oh yeah, like let's say it survives in water for days, and you just get some on your whatever. I don't want to think about that, but also maybe it could lead. Not only is it perfectly spreading, or it spreads very efficiently. What happens if it was way more lethal? What happens if it devastated other blood types? And it's just none of us know, and I just think we have to be more. I'm fully on the side that says let's shut it all down for a month, and let's pay for it however we can, but let's shut it down for a month. But I can't, no matter what you say, whether it's open it up, let the old people die, let's get herd immune, to let's shut it all down, let all small independent restaurants die, let's get a bunch of people committing suicide and despair. Both of those options are extreme, and everything in between, none of it's clean, none of it's easy, none of it's perfect. So I'm sympathetic to all that, but I fear that America is going to go for the Swedish strategy overall. Like some parts of the country may try the South Korean way, some parts of the country may try the Italian way, but I think the country as a whole, it's just a lot of. It's just like you said, America's a bit too aggressive. I'm not hiding. I'm standing like a mensch, man, whatever. It's like, well, okay, you get it, and you're not gonna realize that maybe your daughter has a heart irregularity, or an immune deficiency, and she's gonna fucking die at 16, or she's going to survive after a month-long struggle with a weakened heart wall and one lung inoperative, and her career as a soccer player or some kind of physical thing she was pursuing in school is going to be ended. I mean, this is real. I'm not making this up. This is what's going to happen.
I saw a tweet today.
You're not, like you said so beautifully last week about George Floyd probably not even knowing he had a tumor. The American healthcare system is fundamentally broken. Americans do not know the ailments that they have. And when you have a pay-to-play healthcare system, like when healthcare is a business, like oil and in many cases higher education, people do not know that they have an immune deficiency. They don't know that they're vulnerable to coronavirus's influence. They don't know.
And we still don't know what its effects will be. I saw a tweet today from a intensive care unit nurse, and she was talking about, like, well, what do you mean by recovered? Just because you don't have the coronavirus anymore doesn't mean, like, she said that she had a patient who had to have 2 lung transplants.
Jesus Christ.
Right, afterwards. But he's cured. You know, what happens if you become... She said something about makes blood very thick, which I don't understand. But, like, she said there's issues of strokes afterwards. There's issues of possible heart attacks. There's all this stuff we don't know about. Right? So, we just don't know what and how long this will affect us for. Right? Like, health-wise, not just monetarily. Like, I've been doing lots of stories about how global GDP is expected to drop 7% and crazy stuff that... And Britain's economy fell 20%, 20.4% last month. It's the highest on record. It's 1/5.
That's, oh my God. That's Yugoslavia, dog.
Yeah.
That's Yugoslavia in the 80s. Maybe, well, no, maybe it was worse in Yugoslavia, but my God, that's high.
That's 20.4%.
We just, no one knows how to rethink the way we live, too. Like, you know, this 3 months, things contract a little bit economically, and we're talking a decade to recover.
Yeah.
What?
What's wrong with their system?
Like, what kind of system do we have? You know, ancient Egypt, they had a bad year. They had granaries. They could just, all right, well, we had grain from last year. We stored up here. It's like a period of severe drought would not affect the grain supply for 10 years. You know, granted, life was a little simpler and a lot shorter back then, but Jesus Christ, 3 months?
Yeah, I know. Something's wrong with the system. We have to go back and...
very wrong.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that next time, is how should we go back, or how should we go back after this?